That's gonna need some work. Hey, how you doing? Today, I've got 4 minutes to show you how to fix drywall. First thing we're gonna need is a few holes to fix. Let's start with a small one. Smallish. And while we're at it, maybe even a little smaller. Yeah, it's better. A medium one. And a big one. Start by scraping the surface clean with a spackling knife. For dents and holes smaller than a dime, use spackling paste. This one has primer in it, which saves you a step later on. Spackling paste fills really well, but it's kind of lightweight and it's not good for bigger dents or holes that go all the way through. For bigger repairs about the size of a quarter, start by using fiberglass mesh. Use the joint knife to hold down the mesh and cut it, then press it into the wall firmly. The next step is to mix up some 20-minute joint compound powder. Now, this is different than the stuff you buy pre-mixed in a box or the lightweight spackle I just used. It dries much harder and it won't crack. But you only have about 7 or 8 minutes to get it on the wall and smooth out before it hardens, so don't mix up more than you can use in about 10 minutes. Press the joint compound into the mesh and then feather it out as thin as you can because this stuff dries really hard and it's difficult to sand down the road. For a hole like this, about the size of a fist, we're going to make a California patch. Start by cutting a piece of drywall about 1.5 inches bigger than the hole on all sides. Most home centers will sell you a small project panel so you don't have to buy a whole sheet of drywall. Make sure you get the right thickness of drywall, measure it at home, it's either 1/2 inch or 5/8. Trace the piece you cut over the hole. Now, measure in 1.5 inches and mark the lines. On the piece you've already cut, measure in 1.5 inches and mark the same lines. Score the lines with a razor knife, cutting only through the paper on the back. Now snap the edges off at the scored lines and carefully pull them off, leaving the paper on the front. Cut out the inside box you marked around the hole with the drywall saw. Always feel around inside the hole for wires and plumbing before you start cutting. Now test fit your patch. If it's too tight, cut a little more off with your razor knife. When it's a good fit, mix up some 20-minute joint compound and place some on the inside of the hole and all around the outside a couple of inches beyond where the edge of the paper will be. Push the paper in firmly around the outside of the patch with a joint knife. If there are any little bubbles, just lift the paper up a bit, place a little more mud underneath the edge and smooth it back out. Switch to a joint knife bigger than the patch if you have one and feather out the whole area as thin as possible. For large areas of damage, we're going to use the panel and furring strip method. Now start out by cutting a panel larger than the damaged area. Don't be afraid to oversize this. We want strong drywall all along the edge of our patch. Trace the new piece around the damage and cut it out with the drywall saw. Cut some furring strips about 5 or 6 inches longer than the sides of the new opening. I like to use plywood because it doesn't split when you screw into it. Use 1 5/8 drywall screws through the existing drywall to attach the strips. Drive the screws about 1 inch from the edge and only until they just dimple the paper, no deeper. Now fit the new panel. I like to drive a screw in the center to help place the panel. Screw off the new panel and mix up some 20-minute joint compound. Push the joint compound into the joints from both directions. I don't like to use fiberglass joint tape here. It builds up an edge that makes the patch really noticeable without extensive finishing work. The 20-minute compound is very strong. I stopped using the tape years ago and I've never had any cracks. Sand, mud, prime, paint.